Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Wellness Wave, a podcast that aims to promote psychological knowledge, especially among young people, by featuring interviews to professionals, counselors, and individuals with unique insights on mental health. I am Lillian, a student from Hong Kong International School, and I am with Dr. Terence Ma, an educational psychologist in Spot Children's Therapy Center in Hong Kong.
Good evening, Lillian. Thanks for your time today, and it's great to speak with you. And a quick introduction, I'm Terence, and I'm practicing as an education psychologist in Hong Kong right now. And I'm actually also HKS graduate. I'm from year 2007. So nice to talk to a fellow HKS classmate.
Yeah. Thank you for accepting our invitation to be one of our interviewees. We're very excited to hear and learn further about psychological insights from you. Your expertise and knowledge will definitely inspire those viewers interested in psychology and its aspects. To start, I would like to know, what led you to pursue and be interested in the psychological field? And has this always been your passion or something that slowly grew over the years?
Well, my interest in psychology actually began when I was studying in high school at HKIS. It was, I think, the last year where, HKIS offers like AP courses, advanced courses, that's connected with college. And I took psychology and I fell in love with that subject because, the teacher introduced it as psychology is a study of human soul. So it sounded very interesting, very arcane. I wanted to know more. And at that time, we were all teenagers. So me and my friends, we were going through the high school phases. You went to HCAS, you know what it's like. And I had some friends that had like stress, maybe even mental health concerns. And I actually talked to them a lot, and I found a lot of pleasure actually just listening to them and maybe somehow like giving them advices, making them feel comfortable, or even helping them. So I was still studying psychology. So I was thinking, if I were to go to college, why don't I pursue a career in this? Or before a career, like learn more about it as a college degree, So HKS gave me the platform to learn about psychology, and that built my interest.
So, among all of the fields of psychology, why did you specialize in developmental and educational psychology?
Because the major part of my job is actually working with, usually people think it's working with kids, right? But if you like kids, you can be a teacher, you see kids every day, right? But as a psychologist, you work more with the system. So you do see the kid, but you also spend a lot of time with the school, with the teachers, the educators, and the families. So I like, working out, what resources the kid has in their life and to improve their quality of life. And they're more malleable in those times. If you identify their strength or the area of needs, you can do a lot more to help them improve instead of, them reaching adulthood.
Yeah. Can you walk us through what a day is like in your field as an educational psychologist?
So in the morning, the day usually begins at 8:30. The day either begins at the clinic or at a school. So if it's at the clinic, usually a kid will come in to do assessments about their IQ, learning, or other areas of needs. Or at a school, we will do school observations and meetings with the teachers. We want to observe the kid when they're in their best state, when they're fully awake, had breakfast, and want to see how they're hanging out, in the classroom or with their classmates. Okay. And in the afternoon, usually I'm seeing parents or teachers regarding, their assessment results, intakes, or individual or group sessions, for some children that might have learning, emotional, executive function challenges, or, just sessions with parents about, parenting strategies.
What would you say is the most challenging and most rewarding part of your work?
Most challenging was definitely managing the stamina. But other than that, in terms of the work itself, sometimes it's breaking the news to the parent. Like sometimes we do intellectual assessments, and the kids sometimes might have intellectual disabilities, and nobody wants to hear that result, right? Because that's something that it's quite irreversible. So, breaking the news sometimes to the parent, or even like learning difficulties, dyslexia, dyscalculia, this kind of news, when you tell to the parent, and sometimes they tear up a bit and they have denial, they have emotions. Well, you gotta comfort them and comfort yourself at the same time. So that could be challenging, but the rewarding part is what comes after. Because one of my standard is that for every kid or parent I see, I try to make them happy, but happy not as in not giving them the truth, but no matter what the results are, I want to empower them. I want to give them a sense of hope or a direction or narrow their expectations, pointing them to a way. And once that's established, I feel pretty good too. It could be an exhausting day, but when I walk out of the office or the school, I feel motivated because somehow I made a difference in someone's life. I made someone, instead of them being bewildered or denying, they have something to pursue. So it's quite rewarding, even mentally to myself.
Mm-hmm. Can you give us an idea about the demographics of your clients, such as their age and, if possible, the
Mhm.
most commonly occurring diagnosis amongst your clients?
The age is actually very broad. So it starts from infants, actually. Sometimes the kids is as young as 1 or 2 years old. And some could be in college, they're 20, 21, so very, very wide range. But in
Mm.
terms of the diagnosis, it's dyslexia, actually learning difficulties, autism, ADHD, and mental health concerns.
So, in what ways do you provide psychological services to children and their families?
So usually the journey begins with an assessment. You got to know the client. You got to use the data, use the science to measure what their current status is, right? So you establish a profile for that student, and then you proceed either with individual sessions with the kid. For instance, you assess that kid. He could be very smart, but he has emotion issues. So then you do one-on-one emotion regulation sessions with them. But that's not where it ends. Well, typically, in a lot of outside institutions, the kid comes in for training, they learn something, they leave, bye bye, right? But the effectiveness might not be ideal. So another highlight of the service is that after I see the kid or the parent, there has to be a transfer of skills. So you share whatever the child acquired in that session or what you saw with the teachers or the parents. The parents bring them in, like you can just do a quick feedback, tell them what they acquired and what else they can do at home to make sure that whatever they learn is put into practice into their setting. So that's more individual, right? In another way is that there could be a group of students with specific needs. Say, for example, dyslexia in Chinese for primary school kids. I run groups, to teach them multisensory methods or other learning techniques to help them catch up in their academics. Yeah, so individual or group.
So, what are some of your experiences when working with children who may have trauma or adverse childhood experiences? And what
Oh,
usually is the approach that you use in these cases?
first of all, like every client is different, but the general principle is to make them feel safe first and to build a lot of rapport with them. Like make sure that, they're being respected, like the engagement with you is not intimidating. Sometimes like it could just begin with a session of just pure play. You don't have to dig into their issues yet, but make them trust you first and then use different ways for them to express their experience, especially for younger kids. Like you don't just ask them like, hey, did your parents spank you? Like maybe they're not comfortable talking about it. But sometimes, through narrative approach, through like little dolls, toys, they can express their inner world, or even through drawing, like the house tree person approach. You can see a lot of those. That's the psychodynamic part. Like that's how you can work with them. But for older, maybe more articulate teenager or children's, you can use more emotional regulation based therapy or cognitive behavior therapy, different approaches to help them. And that's all with the kid, right? And sometimes you can talk to the caregivers as well, or the person that maybe kind of caused the trauma or didn't do too well at one stage, gave the kid a bad experience. Well, you work with them too, and for some of the time, they improve as well. You can share with them positive parenting strategies like positive psychology concepts to them for them to slowly improve and nurture their child. So once again, it's the system work, not just individual sessions.
So, do you think how educational psychology can make a difference in the classroom setting or other learning environments?
The role education psychologist works is actually very interesting because in this big system, right, we take a very neutral stance. Like we don't stand on any sides. Of course, it's for the well-being of the child, but we don't incline towards saying like judging whether the parents or school is right. We tend to observe, what like holistically, what resources that can be mobilized in the child's life, let it be home, school, or outside resources. And then you make the decision of how you can help them. That's once again system work. Usually, like the interesting role is that we use psychological theories to solve the problem for them. Like that's the very like important point. Like we don't give them opinions just because we think it's right. It's because we give opinions based on the data, the assessments we conducted, our observations, using the theoretical approaches. Say for example, it's ADHD, right? We tend to observe them in terms of executive function. And then we give them targeted suggestions. So it's not subjective. We try to be objective. And since we're in a neutral stance in this, it's easier for the people to take in the opinions. And sometimes we tend to see things that others don't see, because we are novel to the situation. We're more observant of every detail.
What would you say is like the biggest challenge in collaborating with a child's parents regarding the reality of the situation as a child with special education needs?
The biggest challenge is actually having all of the caregivers being on the same team in it. Because sometimes when you see a child, right, it's always that one specific parent that brings the child in. And sometimes the other half is not aware of it. Sometimes the parent is like, I didn't tell my wife or husband about this, but I think my child needs this help. Can you assess them? I did, right? But when it comes to supporting, if the information is not disclosed to the other party, or if the other party is not accepting it, it could be hard. So one of the challenge is actually getting the parent that never comes to come, right? But if they do, the second challenge is to really tell them what the truth is, But once again, the easier way to get into their heart is first of all to praise them. It's like, hey, I really appreciate that both parents are here today. Usually when both are here, it's easier for us to work with the kid. And I saw your kid, what they're good at is da 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 da. But the other issue is this. But there are ways we can work around it. And we need to form a therapeutical relationship in this, because you're the expert of your child. You know your child for more than a decade. I only know him for a few days or hours, right? So let's talk about how you can help them, because they're the ones that are most aware of their resources. And if the parents, the caregivers, are not a team, it's very hard for the child to improve. Usually they're just bounced, in between the caregiving. It's chaotic sometimes.
Do you have any experience where you successfully engage parents in addressing a learning or behavioral issue with their child? And if so, can you share an example with us?
Usually, one of the experience actually working with a child with very explosive temper. Like the parents would call that child a total force of nature, with outbursts, with meltdowns, and breaking things, hurting himself. They have no idea. They're on the edge of giving up, right? But I saw the child, I shared with him some strategies for managing their emotions. Okay, I assessed the child, so that child is a totally visual learner. So I use a lot of videos, a lot of drawing, a lot of colors to transfer the skill to the kid. And then I invited the parents to come in to ask for the child to present it in front of their parents. I didn't say anything. I'm just like, hey, this kid, like your kid learned the skill. Why don't you tell daddy and mommy what superpower you acquire? We try to make it fun. It's not like we're learning the lesson. What superpower you acquire? And the child proudly demonstrated it. I'm like, hey, you see, he learned the skill. And now the next step is to put you on a quest. At home, if you're having this temper tantrum, take out those skills. Your parents now know it. They can remind you to do it. And there were instances of success at home. There were times when the kid is boiling up, but the parents reminded the kid used a strategy to manage themselves, and the parents were happy because whatever that was learned was transferred and it worked.
What advice would you give to young people who are hesitant to seek for help for their mental health?
Well, first of all, we need to acknowledge to them that, especially living in Hong Kong, an Asian society, there's a stigma. People don't like to open up about it, right? But once you do, that's the first step. Once again, I'm repeating myself. Like once you do, it's actually the first step of helping yourself. So by opening up about it, albeit the stigma, is your first step of curing yourself, of improvement. Okay? Okay.
So, what is your advice to other fellow professionals in this field?
Number one, you got to take care of yourself first. Because from all the cases you see, it could be mentally taxing. Eat well, sleep well, go see your friends, have a life. Okay, that's number one. And when you're recharged, always remember that you need to have ownership over the things you do, no matter how busy you are. And finally, for professionals, is to be always updated with the current trend and to learn new things. Because once you get busy, you stop studying, you stop learning. So take webinars, read journals, and by the way, being in high school and college is very lucky, accumulated a lot of knowledge. Because once you're in the real world, you don't have time for that. Stay hungry, stay smart. Yeah.
Yes, that's all the questions.